Hello, my name is Adam Rai, and I'm doing my presentation on the effects of microplastic on the human body. Now, with a title like that, you're probably thinking to yourself, how are microplastics even ending up in the human body in the first place? I don't know anyone, and I'd guess you don't know anyone who goes out of their way to eat plastics, but with a name like microplastics, it kind of gives away how they're getting in. And that's because you are ingesting plastic in a way that it is so small and so undetectable that you don't even know it's happening. And that is because it is mainly coming in from things like food packaging, water bottles, up the food chain, your general environment like your house, your clothing, your carpet, things like that. And it is flaking off in basically microscopic pieces, as the name would imply. And you are unable to see these, notice them, or feel them, so you are ingesting them without your knowledge. And now I think it's important to know what types of plastics are being consumed because this tells you where they're specifically coming from. The most common ones that are used in food packaging are polyvinyl chloride, or more commonly known as PVC, and polyethylene. So these two are used in like bags, linings of trays of food, containers, stuff like that. And PVC specifically is often used as pipes. That's how you may actually recognize the name as PVC pipes. And there are many houses that carry water throughout it using PVC pipes. So if you have these in your home, you may be getting PVC water delivered to your faucet. And as the water sloshes around in that pipe, it's rubbing off microscopic pieces of plastic into your drinking water. And then polycarbonate is used in water bottles, similar to the way PVC pipes might leak plastic into your water. These plastic water bottles also have water sloshing around in them all day. They're expanding and contracting with the heat and cold, so microscopic pieces are leaching into the bottle, into the water from the bottle, and you are going to be drinking those. And that's how it's going to be getting into your system. And then polyester is actually a little bit different than those other two because this is not something that is actually coming directly in contact, you could say, with the food you're consuming, because these are mostly found in things that are traveling up the food chain. So smaller organisms are eating microplastics, or even in some cases macroplastics, and then a bigger organism eats them, eats them, eats them, so on and so forth, until it eventually gets to us. And so we're eating all the microplastics that the previous organisms ate. So things that are being dumped in the ocean, the fish are eating, slowly goes up the food chain to what we're eating. Or it's even coming in from meat packaging plants as well, or just places that have conveyor belts, because this is often used in those kind of operations. It rubs off into the food, and then we eat them. And then nylon is different than most because this is not someone or something that we're consuming actively with food. This is more of something that's just in our general environment. Nylon is probably something you've heard of before because of how common it is in our environment. And that's because basically every piece of clothing or pillow casing, blankets, everything like that is made of nylon or some sort of nylon blend. I mean, even most carpets in homes are some sort of nylon blended fabric, and that's because of how cheap it is and how easy it is to produce. But these things rub off all day, and then they get on your hands or they get in the air. So when you're inhaling, eating, etc., you're going to be ingesting nylon fabric. And then bisphenol A, or BPA, is also a more well-known one, and that's probably because you've seen it on you've seen the BPA-free stickers or tags on water bottles before, and that's because they used to be pretty common to see in water bottles, but now they're mostly only used in receipt paper, which is one of the main ingredients of receipt paper. And the reason it was banned in most containers is because of its link to cancer, which I will explore upon in a little bit. And so the effects of plastic on the human body are, as I just stated, one of them being cancer, and others being obesity, intestinal problems, GI problems, hormone disruption, birth defects, or just general irritation of your eyes, skin, lungs, throat, etc. And most of these problems are actually caused by one thing, and that is hormone disruption. And that's because a lot of these plastics can be classified as EDCs, or endocrine disrupting chemicals, which disrupt your hormone system. Your endocrine system is basically just the overall term for your hormonal system, and that's because many of these plastic compounds are bioidentical to estrogen, and estrogen is one of the most important hormones in your body. Most people know it for being the main sex hormone in the development of females through puberty, but men have estrogen too, and it's actually just as important as men as it is in women, because estrogen is used to regulate body fat, it's used to regulate brain health, your fat distribution, even your temperature to a certain extent. And when your estrogen is not in the right place, your testosterone is also not going to be affected, right? Because these two systems go hand in hand, your estrogen and testosterone. So if your estrogen is being infected, it's going to have cascading effects, and EDCs can affect the growth and development of youth and adolescence. They can affect your reproductive health, your energy levels, and your stress levels, all because of the way they affect your hormones. And actually, children, babies, and as I said, prepubescents are actually way more at risk to damage from these EDCs because they need their hormones to be in optimal places so that way they can develop properly, because missing certain milestones could be permanent in adolescence. Now, as I stated, that hormones are very important for many bodily functions, but a lot of people don't know this, but your hormones actually also play a part in how likely you are to get cancer. In men, it's their testosterone levels for their prostate, but in women, it's their estrogen in relation to breast cancer. So now, BPA, it was very common in water bottles, and BPA is one of the most bioidentical compounds in the human body to estrogen. And obviously, it is not as powerful as something like hormone replacement therapy, estrogen, which can transition someone's gender through hormones changing. But this is still has an effect on the human body through its bioidenticalness, and that led to an increased rate of cancer in women. But this also has other cascading effects in cancer in other places as well. But that was just the most researched relation. And as I stated, how important your hormones are, that's how it leads to many of the other effects. Like if your hormones are not proper, you're not going to have good fat distributions, and you're not going to be able to regulate your body fat. So you're going to be more likely to be obese. And being obese comes with a myriad of health problems. And this is all just stemming from your hormones not being in the proper place. And this can also lead to GI problems with obesity. And then hormone damage can be permanent in youth, because if they don't develop properly, they're going to have permanent issues with their body because they miss certain milestones and their testosterone or estrogen was never at the proper levels to develop from adolescence to adult through puberty. And then the skin, eye, throat irritation is mostly caused through allergic reactions. This is something most people have seen before. Maybe you knew someone who you worked with who had a latex allergy, so they couldn't wear the latex gloves at work. But many people have allergies to things and they don't notice it because it's so mild, but it's still an allergy nonetheless. Like you may have an allergy to a certain type of plastic, you touch it with your hands, then you touch your eyes and your eyes start watering a little bit, or you start coughing or something. And you may just think it's a seasonal allergy because it's pretty mild. You know, you don't need to go to the hospital for it or anything, but still, you are being affected by the plastic in your environment. Now, this sounds doom and gloom, and you probably are looking around your room seeing all the plastic bottles or cans or wrappers you have strewn about, and you're realizing just how much plastic is in your daily diet or environment. And so there are ways to avoid microplastics in general, and that's mainly being eating out less and avoiding things that come in plastic containers, because those are the main culprits behind certain plastics ending up in your body. Also, avoiding receipt paper if possible. If they ask whether or not you want it, say no. But if they just give it to you, try to wash your hands before you eat. Don't let little ones and babies crawl around on vinyl carpets for too long. Obviously, you know, it can't be avoided forever. Babies got to walk around, but don't forget that how much babies like putting their dirty hands in their mouth. So if they're touching that vinyl carpet and they're getting those plastic fibers all over their hands, then they're putting it in their mouth. They're going to be ingesting it. So reduce that. And then if you can, and you want to get meat, I know a lot of it comes plastic wrapped in grocery stores. You could ask the butcher just to wrap it in butcher paper or that wax paper if possible. I know that's kind of unavoidable for a lot of people because at most stores you cannot directly ask for a cut of meat. You just have to take whatever they have wrapped in plastic with styrofoam. But if possible, you can do that. And then avoiding the plastic bottles and drinking out of glass or metal instead. And that's mainly because the plastic bottles are just microplastic bombs, basically. And also, if you drink less out of plastic bottles, that's less plastic waste. So it's a win-win. Now, in conclusion, I just want to restate some of my points from previous, like how microplastics are entering the human body through many sources, mostly being ingestion through microplastics found from food packaging, from your environment, the nylon clothing in your environment, stuff like that, up the food chain through smaller organisms eating smaller plastics or sometimes even larger pieces of plastic and then getting eaten by larger and larger organisms until eventually it makes it up to us. And that these EDCs, or endocrine disrupting chemicals, have the worst damage to the human body that out of any of the effects, and they have cascading effects as well. So it might just be hormone dysregulation, but that can lead to a myriad of very serious health complications. And then the best way to avoid microplastics in general is just to avoid things that you know have plastics. Obviously, you can't avoid eating all meat, fish, dairy. I mean, you could, but a lot of people don't want to do that. So just avoiding eating a lot of packaged food is going to reduce your exposure to microplastics greatly. And now here are my citations. And I want to thank you for listening. I know that was very doom and gloom, but raising awareness to a problem is the best way to solve it. So again, thank you for listening.